Welcome into the Hyundai Studios here on STOHD.com for STO Fantasy Playbook. I'm Will Ewick, joined alongside Ryan Cavanaugh. Today we have Stardom, Situm, Injury Impact, and also the Fantasy Marketplace. We begin with Stardom, Situm. We remind you, we're not going to give you guys like Brady and Breeze to start. We're also not going to give you Whedon and Tannehill to bench. You should well know that. We're looking for those fringe players, guys that people are actually talking about whether or not they should put in their lineup. One guy getting a lot of hype right now, Alfred Morris.
Alfred Morris comes from the stay away from him Washington Redskins backfield because you never know who's going to get the ball or how many times. Morris made it clear in week one he is the starter, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the biggest stat, which is left off there, is 28 carries. If you have Alfred Morris, get him in your starting lineup. I also go with Joe Flacco. The Ravens have been known as a rushing team. He put up 299 and 2 touchdowns last week. They now have a no-huddle offense, and the most important stat left off there is Ray Rice, only 10 carries. The Ravens are giving the keys to the Cadillac to Joe Flacco, and you should give the keys to your fantasy football team to Joe Flacco and get him in the lineup as your starting quarterback.
Another guy you should give the keys to, C.J. Spiller, was backing up Fred Jackson in Buffalo. Got in because of an injury last year and did well. Fred Jackson injured again. C.J. Spiller steps in, 169 yards on 14 carries with a score. Also added 2 receptions for 25 yards, so he'll help you out, put him in. Also the Oakland Raiders defense, they looked very good against San Diego, holding them to 32 rushing yards. And now they get Miami, Ryan. You got Tannehill coming in. He had 3 picks last week, so I expect a couple of sacks, maybe a pick, and maybe even a score. Now we move on to our sits, and a big name that you don't really like is close to home, Trent Richardson.
Right. Well, Trent Richardson is still knocking off the rust. As we saw him here in Cleveland, he looked slow. He did not look very agile. And again, he's playing for the Cleveland Browns. He had 19 carries, only 39 yards. And this week, he goes down to Cincinnati, a tough run defense. Until I see Trent Richardson do something that shows he's going to get some yardage, I keep him on my bench. Mark Sanchez, I just said start Joe Flacco, sit Mark Sanchez. In his 4th year, this is the first time he's ever shown this sort of promise, 266 and 3 touchdowns. I expect next week Stephen Hill to be Stephen Hill, which means he's going to drop a couple passes, and Mark Sanchez to be Mark Sanchez, which means inconsistent. Keep him on your bench.
Your Trent Richardson philosophy, I like it exactly the same way for Beanie Wells. This is a guy that you expected to be great out of college, out of the Buckeye State here, but really hasn't really shown what he can do, and now he's splitting time with Ryan Williams, and also the Rod Stevens Howling gets in. He gets 2 carries. Really, it's a 3-headed monster. No one's getting the majority of the work, and no one really looked very good anyways. Wells with just 14 yards on 7 carries. Now they go against the Patriots, who held Chris Johnson to 4 yards on 11 carries. I sit away from Beanie Wells and wait till he proves it to me. Kevin Smith, I told you last week to start him, Ryan. If you did, you're thanking me today because he probably won you your week. This week, I'm going to say sit him. Although he's had a good week, it was against the St. Louis Rams defense. Now he gets the 49ers defense, a defense that was #1 in rushing defense last year, and they really did a nice job against Cedric Benson, only 18 yards on 9 carries, so I sit him. Now we move on to the injury impact. Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears on Thursday night. These Thursday night games now are all year long. And Greg Jennings popping up on the injury report, questionable with a groin injury. James Jones probably moves into that role, but not the only beneficiary.
Yeah, if you're the Green Bay Packers, you got to sit Greg Jennings. Too early in the season to risk a groin and losing him for more weeks. You're right about James Jones. He started as the #3. But if you're looking for bigger play and bigger potential going forward, Randall Cobb is a great name. He's probably on your waiver wire. Pick him up.
Okay, now we move on to the fantasy marketplace. Guys, we try to tell you long-term. Maybe you can buy low, maybe you can sell high. A big sell high for you is actually a top 5 fantasy quarterback in the draft, Cam Newton.
I don't want to jump on him right away after week 1, but let's look at his numbers last year. 31 combined touchdowns, almost unheard of. This year, after week 1, only 1 touchdown in the passing game and only 4 yards rushing. Remember, the rushing touchdowns and the rushing yards was what made Cam Newton so valuable. You probably drafted him at the end of the 1st round or the beginning of the 2nd round. You can get some good value for him, and there's a lot of young bucks coming up. I'd look to move Cam Newton. And then Andrew Hawkins. Someone's got to play alongside A.J. Green down in Cincinnati. Hawkins, all 5'7" of him, has shown the ability not only to catch the football, but yards after catch. Week 1, he was targeted 9 times by Andy Dalton and caught 8 of those. A terrific day, and I look for Hawkins' star to keep rising. Keep an eye on Andrew Hawkins.
And not to gang up with the Browns. I know they play him this week, but But one of my buy low candidates here, Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, the law firm, looked phenomenal on Monday night. And this was against a Baltimore Ravens defense that's supposed to be great. He really did a nice job. Green Ellis, 91 yards and a score against that Baltimore defense. Ryan, next 4 opponents, Browns, Skins, Jags, Dolphins, Browns. He's going to be chomping at the bit, and you should too to get him in your lineup. My sell high, Michael Vick, we saw firsthand here, 4 picks, and he's not a rookie quarterback. His opponents here, Baltimore Ravens, the Atlanta Falcons, the Giants, Pittsburgh, Detroit. These are some tough matchups, and he didn't do very well against the Browns. I think you could probably sell high on Michael Vick right now, and I would look to do that. That's all the time we have for STO Fantasy Playbook this week. Make sure you check out STOHD.com every week for this advice. Also, we have columns up, so make sure you check it out. Ryan Cavanaugh, Will Ewick reminding you that it's your fantasy. We just happen to be in it.